today. But he's here in spirit, and we'll be producing a commemorative video of today's dedication ceremony to share with him and his family. I'd like to welcome back all of our distinguished guests and extend another warm welcome to a few more special guests today. Dr. Corkrum's wife, Dr. Sharon Corkrum. Sharon's sisters, Jeannie Ballard and Sonia Hinckley. Sharon's foster daughter, Heidi Ahn. And Sharon's goddaughters, Catherine and Evelyn Wagner. And thank you, Sharon, for sharing some fascinating stories about Bob with me. Dr. Robert L. Corkrum, Bob Corkrum, spent the first 6 years of his teaching career in the La Puente and Roland school districts. In 1973, Jack Jolly, who worked in our district office at the time, recruited Bob for a job at Walnut High School. Interestingly, Jack Jolly was also the first principal of Nogales High School, where I went to high school. And as a noble, I happen to know that the stadium at Nogales High School is named after him, Jack Jolly Stadium. You can't forget that name. Well, here at Diamond Bar High School, our stadium is also named after our first principal, Walt Holmes. And in Nogales, the library is named in honor of their second principal. And here we are, naming our library in honor of our second principal. I just thought that was interesting. At Walnut High School, Bob taught biology, served as the science department chair, and coached football. Bob joined Diamond Bar High School's opening staff after an interview that included observing and evaluating a teacher as part of the interview process. Dr. Perez, cover your ears. That teacher happened to be Sharon, his future wife. Which begs the question, what exactly was that lesson plan, Sharon? It clearly left an impression on Bob. They began dating and got married a few years later. Let's hear it for the 1970s, huh? I don't know what was happening. I don't know what you guys were doing. As one of the original Brahmas, Bob was the instructional dean for the Vocational and Creative Arts Division, what we used to call VACA. In the school's second year, he became the second assistant principal. And in 1986, after founding principal Walt Holmes passed away unexpectedly, Bob stepped up as interim principal, then officially took on the role and proudly served as principal for well over a decade. Bob was a Brahma through and through. Bob is a Brahma through and through. He led our school through its formative years, originating the concept of the 4 A's, academics, activities, athletics, and the arts. It was our fourth principal, Dr. Catherine Rial, who added our 5th A, access. Bob had the saying, take care of teachers and they will take care of their students. The year Bob became principal, Top Gun had just come out. Bob embraced the spirit of the times and had the nickname Top Brahma. He got the license plate DBHS 1 for his car. And he and his assistant principal, Hank Johnson, thought they were Maverick and Goose. I combed the archives for a picture of them in those aviator sunglasses. Or maybe playing beach volleyball, but we didn't have the internet back then. Thank goodness. So let's hear it for the 80s. Bob attended nearly every event on campus, and if he missed one, it wasn't for lack of trying. Bob's pride in our students and staff was unprecedented. On a personal note, Bob hired me for my first teaching job to teach science here in 1990. I still remember my interview with him and Charles Sismondo sitting in his corner office, overlooking what was then a grassy knoll where our theater and administration buildings now stand. Charles made me balance a chemical equation and solve a physics problem using the work energy theorem. But Bob was always supportive. Bob's support made an enormous difference in my career. He encouraged me to expand our science curriculum, adding advanced courses in engineering, physics, and AP environmental science. That course would go on to shape my professional life in ways I could never have predicted. Today, as we dedicate this library in Bob's honor, we are also reminded of his vision, his dedication, and his lasting influence on Diamond Bar High School. Bob's legacy will live on not only in this library, but in every one of us who had the privilege of working with him, learning from him, or just sharing his pride for our school. At this time, I'd like to again introduce Dr. Taylor to say a few words.
Thank you, Mr. Hong. I think it's really appropriate that 3 of our Diamond Bar High School principals are here today to honor Dr. Corkrum. It is such a pivotal and influential role in our organization that it just means a lot that you're all here today. I'm really honored to be able to speak to you at this event. In my 12 years as superintendent, one of my most cherished memories that I'll always have is when I got to call Dr. Corkrum and Sharon and let them know that the board had taken action to approve that Dr. Corkrum's name will always be on this building. And just the joy and how much that meant to Dr. Corkrum, I felt the impact of that, and it meant a lot to me to be able to make that phone call. His name will always be on the building, and the impact that he left on the culture here at Diamond Bar will always be felt. So again, to Sharon and his family, and to Dr. Corkrum, we're so proud and honored to have your name on our library. So thank you.
And I'd like to introduce Helen again to say a few words.
As we stand before this beautiful facility, we are reminded of Dr. Corkrum's unwavering commitment to education. He believed that a strong foundation in learning could empower our youth to achieve greatness. This library, a hub of knowledge and creativity, will inspire future generations, just as Dr. Corkrum had inspired us. The library itself has modular furniture, an enlarged textbook storage room, and 2 mounted projectors with drop-down screens. Let this space serve not only as a repository of books, but also as a gathering place for ideas, innovation, and community. Dr. Corkrum's legacy will continue to thrive within these walls, encouraging students to explore, discover, and grow. Thank you, Dr. Corkrum, for your invaluable impact on our community. Here's to the future and to the countless lives you have touched. Thank you.
Thank you, Helen. And now I'd like to introduce retired grade level coordinator, Mr. Kevin Patterson.
Well, I've been retired for 6 months, so I have a lot to say. You told me I had about 15 minutes, is that accurate? It's a great honor to be here today, to recognize and say a few words about Dr. Corkrum. Bob has made a tremendous impact on me, and more importantly, Diamond Bar High School. Dr. Corkrum, what can I say? I had to kind of say a few things about what he meant to me, what he meant to this school, and the process of getting this done. I began the process of having our Diamond Bar High School library named after Dr. Corkrum about 8 or 9 years ago. Hit a few stumbling blocks on campus in pursuit of recognizing Bob. But I've been told in my career that I'm a stubborn person. persistent person. And so I continued to push and made a wise decision and contacted our leader, Dr. Taylor. Went directly to him, and he pointed me in the right direction. And I appreciate that. So thank you, Dr. Taylor, and thank you to the school board for making this happen today. I would also like to thank some of my colleagues that were very supportive during those 8 or 9 years, telling me to keep pushing, that type of thing. John Good, Jack Aliner, Susan Craig, Virginia Garner, Dennis Paul, Randy Thomas, Kathy Van Dukian, David Ong, our current principal, Courtney Corona, assistant principal, Mike Bromberg, and the current GLC team. But probably most importantly, my beautiful wife, Kim, who kept telling me to keep it going, keep pushing to get this done. Bob Corkrum's role in the building of the Diamond Bar High School Foundation, the structure and the culture in our school's history is unmatched, in my opinion. Bob took the reins of our school in May of 1986 upon the sudden death of our first principal, Walt Holmes. It was a tremendous task and challenge that he had. But Walt always stressed, I remember this as a young teacher, being prepared and seizing opportunities when presented to you. And Bob was the right person to take over the leadership of Diamond Bar High School. He led our school and built the framework for the academic rigor and technology advances that we enjoy here today, all while maintaining a small hometown school feel with deep traditions. In addition, Dr. Corkrum loved our kids. He loved our school events. He was a huge advocate of students being involved in their school and their school community. Bob Corkrum is very special to me. As I entered education as a new teacher here at Diamond Bar High School in 1984, Bob was a key member of our administrative team, led by Walt Holmes. Bob was always very kind to me and served as a mentor to me. Bob went above and beyond as a leader to encourage his staff to continue to improve, to excel, and to be prepared for opportunities if they presented themselves. Bob supported me when just after 4 years of teaching here, I was presented with an opportunity to coach college basketball at Cal Poly Pomona. I was pretty nervous about approaching Bob with the news. However, true to form, Bob practiced what he preached. He supported my move even though it was 4 days before we opened the doors for the school year. 4 days before, and he still supported me. He even mentored me and advised me, why don't you just take a year leaves of absence if you aren't a very good coach? Luckily, we won a few games, so I was able to stay. I did enjoy almost a decade of coaching ball over at Cal Poly, but in the mid-90s, looked for a change of scenery again. I had always respected the role of the grade level coordinator and the grade level coordinators when I was here in the leagues. And I always felt that if I was in a position to be in that role, that I would seize it and try to get that job. So in the mid-90s, when I left coaching, I contacted Bob and expressed my interest in a return to Diamond Bar High School as a GLC. And well, 30 years later, I retired June 1st as a grade level coordinator in a job that I absolutely loved and cherished for those 30 years. Another Bob Chase, the original Diamond Bar High School GLC, always reminded us when he trained us of how specific events in life, how specific people you meet in life can impact the direction that your life takes. Well, Bob Chase was right, and I remain thankful today that I landed at Diamond Bar High School not once, but twice. Bob Corkrum's impact is felt in so many areas and ways here at Diamond Bar. Naming the library in his honor is well deserved. Sharon Corkrum, Bob's wife, thank you for your support of Bob, and thank you for your support of our high school. I hope thousands of current and future Brahmas will enjoy the Dr. Robert L. Corkrum Library for many years to come. Thank you.
Thank you, Kevin. I'd now like to introduce our third principal at Diamond Bar High School, Mr. Denis Paul.
Thank you, David, and thank you, everybody. It sure feels like home, doesn't it? Seeing everybody? I want to acknowledge the hard work. Kevin is very modest, but he was perseverant in this task. When he told me about his plan, I thought he got an uphill battle, because I know they just don't name buildings or fields or anything after people whimsically. And with the effort of the school board, support of Principals Jones and Hong, it happened. So thank you, Kevin, and thank you guys for your appreciation. If I had to, I'm going to give a little bit of a background on Bob. Hopefully add on some of the things that Kevin said. Bob was truly a visionary. He's still a visionary. He had a clear vision for the potential of buildings, areas, and people. I got to meet Bob as a colleague at Walnut High School in 1979 when he was known as Bio Bob. He was a preeminent science teacher. And he was also a freshman football coach together with me. We got together again on the ad hoc committee group of 8 people that were affectionately known as the Brahma Chips the year before the school opened. And we set out protocols and procedures and things like that. But the rest of us were really at a disadvantage because Bob was the only one that could read blueprints. And so it was never any surprise when we opened the school that Bob had the nicest office and the best location. But the ad hoc committee went into the 4 deans, and I got to be a fellow dean with Bob, and then went back into being a baseball coach. One thing I want to emphasize that Kevin mentioned about his ability to look at people and see their potential and see what they're capable of. I mean, just in this room alone, we see a former freshman English teacher who later became superintendent. We see auto shop teacher and head custodian who all went on to bigger things, bigger and better things in their life. Even an old worn-out baseball coach found the future because of Bob. Bob also had visions of this building. Some of you, well, I mean, some of you may remember, I think Helen will probably remember, this school was built with a library of secondhand books. We bought the library from Lowell High School, which closed down in Whittier the year that we opened. And so we had books that instead of saying Diamond Bar High School on it, they said Whittier Joint Union High School. And Bob could see that those books might be adequate for the present, they were not for the future. So Bob was always studying and demonstrations. He heard about a library up in Arroyo Grande. It was called the Library of the Future. So, never wanted to shy away from a good road trip. Bob and I, Scott McIntyre, who's with us today, Ray Moore, drove up the coast to Arroyo Grande High School and got to visit the Library of the Future. Much to our disappointment, it was lucky to be the Library of the Present. So I think it's also ironic that today we're dedicating the library to Bob. It's truly the Library of the Future. This, if you can see the potential of this room, it's unbelievable. I want to publicly express one thing about Bob's tenure. You know, Bob always had this theory. He always had 2 sayings. He says, I want you ready. When I became his assistant principal the last 4 years of his principalship, I want you ready in case I get hit by the bus. And lo and behold, on August 13th, 1998, he had just given a presentation over, we had portables out in the parking lot at the time, and it was on the new student achievement test that was going on. And he's was up ahead of me and walked ahead. I thought, well, I said, that's unusual. Bob usually tells me where I'm going to lunch, or at least did he invite me. Little did I know that he jumped in his car and drove himself to the hospital, which was a series of challenges for him over the years. But those challenges, those achievements that he made here will never be forgotten thanks to this dedication. So I'm happy to see the library of the future, Dunbar High School.
Thank you, Dennis. It's now my pleasure to introduce Dr. Sharon Corkrum.
Thank you so much for having me here today, and I'm so honored to be here to represent Bob. Thank you, Dr. Taylor and the Walnut Valley Unified School Board of Trustees, Principal Helen, and the Diamond Bar staff who championed this special event and recognition in honor of Bob, but especially to Kevin Patterson and Reuben Jones for pursuing this. Thank you, Kevin. Yeah, every year, Kevin sends Bob a letter, sent him a letter every year after Bob left, on the first day of school and on the last day of school. And so that was Bob's continued connection to Diamond Bar. I'd like to acknowledge my family and friends who have made time out of your busy schedules, and I know you drove from far, but many of you we started here, right, Pete? We're all old Diamond Bar people, and so it's wonderful to be here today. I'd also like to just share, when Dr. Principal Helen called and asked if I would speak a few words in Bob's honor, and on Bob's behalf, I told him, do I have to speak? And really I was thinking, oh boy, there's a microphone. There's never been a microphone that I don't want to talk. So bear with me. So thank you for having us here today. Bob was really disappointed that he can't come. I don't know if you know, but Bob had a massive stroke 15 years ago that left him paralyzed in 3 limbs and took his speech. So those of you who remember how Bob was a really eloquent speaker, getting to see these videos and hear these stories bring back the Bob I haven't heard, but I spend time with, and we talk every day. Well, mostly I talk in my offices. And this building has a special meaning to me. The 400 building, I was on the original staff of Diamond Bar High School, and as you heard, I was on the interview panel, but really there was no hanky-panky, I didn't know that. But when I was hired to be on the Diamond Bar staff, I was the only middle school teacher who was brought up at that time. And I was the only woman in the science department, so you gave me a classroom with a window, for which I was really grateful, but it was really lonely down there. And every day, this was called, I think, Cheyenne building. We had Cheyenne, Bodie, and the chuck wagon. And every day I'd go to the chuck wagon and I'd walk up the stairs, and Bob would be on duty, supervision, and he would be at the fence as I was coming up, and he would say to me, well, good morning, miss. And I didn't know Bob, but he was being like this. And I would walk by him over his head and I'd say, good morning. And I'd just keep walking. Well, that's how we met. And then, he asked me out after I left the school, though, so you don't have to go. It was a long time after I left the school. So Bob loved Diamond Bar High School, and he loved being a Brahma, the top Brahma. And he bled purple and gold. If you saw his wardrobe, you would know. I mean, he slept in purple and gold, so you know he just loved Diamond Bar. So I asked Bob, do you want me to give a cerebral and long speech like you used to give at Diamond Bar functions? And he said, no. And so I just have a few more words. We are truly humbled and honored by this wonderful recognition. Back in the early years of Diamond Bar High School, the Thundering Herd, then under the leadership of Scott McIntyre, was invited to participate in the Fiesta Bowl parade and in the tournament of bands. And these were all of the drum and bugle corps and high school bands from all over the United States. And I remember the Tennessee Volunteers were in our hotel. Well, when all of the Diamond Bar buses, and I'm talking, the band had started with what, 12 students, Scott, and you could make the number 1 on the football field? That's what I remember. Well, it started with that, and it's over 300 and some, 400 students. Bob was so proud that the Thundering Herd showed up at Arizona. And when we walked into the stadium, the announcers said to us, "Welcome to the Bob," because it was the Bank One baseball field at that time. And so I just hit Bob and I said, "Bob, they named a stadium after you. Isn't that cool?" And so never in a million years would we have dreamed that there would be this kind of recognition for Bob and that a building would be named after him. But what I do remember about this library is that this library felt community. This is where the staff meetings were. This is where our cross-district professional development meetings were. Remember, Pete? We'd come over here on joint meetings I was at Chaparral then, and we'd come over here and have our staff development meetings here. And Bob really believed that that a library and a school should be a community and a place where people belonged. And so seeing this now in this library, I think Bob would be so proud to see what you have done and how you have built this and continued that tradition. So a really popular author back in the day, I thought I'd throw in a quote, a really popular author, Sidney Sheldon, said that libraries store the energy that fuels the imagination. They open up windows to the world and inspire us to explore and achieve and contribute to improving our quality of life. And so we trust that you will continue to use your library, Bob, and to build a better community for all. And so now with that, is that